My name is Hadassa Carlebach. I was born in Leningrad, Russia. At that time it was Leningrad. And my parents' name is Zalman Schneerson and Sarah, born Levin. My father was working for the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Joseph Yitzhak Schneerson. He was at one point one of his secretaries, and then he worked for him and to distribute clandestine monies that used to come from the United States to support the underground organizations, the yeshivas and shuls in Russia. At that time, Russia was anti-religion, and very strictly so, and so we did not have permission to meet more than 6 people at a time, and that would be considered already subverting the laws of the state. So all the yeshivas went underground, and mikvahs were built clandestinely, and my father used to be in charge of traveling from place to place and bringing the support money from the United States. He was actually in the army of the Rebbe because the Rebbe was fiercely anti the regime who tried to destroy Yiddishkeit in Russia. So he was his soldier, and somehow it was a very dangerous time, and he learned to work somehow to avoid being caught, and sometimes it's involved all kind of difficult decisions. I used to travel with him many times, so it should look that he's just going on vacation with a suitcase and a child. But if they would ask him to open the suitcase, he would have been in trouble. And learned how to survive under these conditions. And that somehow helped him later on. Unfortunately, when we landed in France and we had to use these methods again, I was oblivious until later I reconstructed what actually happened, because what happened, for instance, one time is my father said, we're going to sleep on the porch tonight. Well, what do you mean we're going to sleep? It's cold. How can we sleep on it? It's okay. There's a table. We'll put blankets on it, and it's going to be fun. You'll see. I'll make it very warm for you. So we slept that night, but the table blocked the door, so that in case an inspection would come, and there were illegal people in the house, they would have a chance to escape through the back. Was such an opponent of the government, he had to escape Russia, and the name Schneerson became an alarm, kind of. But my father was arrested about 12 times for short periods, not even overnight, and he was interrogated and managed to talk himself out of it. But then it came a point where he knew this is too dangerous, so we started working on those papers to get out. It's the only place that Russia allowed to emigrate, if they ever allowed, was Palestine. We arrived on Chol HaMoed Pesach, and the first thing somebody gave me a banana, and to this day when I eat a banana, I'm right back there, and a grapefruit, which I never had before in Russia either. And we arrived in the port of Jaffa. The boat could not dock at a pier. It docked like 200 feet away. So an Arab grabbed me and put me in a small rowing boat, and it scared me a little bit, but I learned not to cry over the years when scared. I was very happy there because I felt free. I could talk and I could laugh, and which I couldn't do in Russia. But anything you said or did could have you, you could betray somebody by it. So I was very happy. My father was not. The country was very socialistic, bordering on communism. And there was a lot of strife between some rabbis there also at the time, and my father didn't want to get involved with that. So he wanted to come to the United States, and he got a visa to come to the United States, but he also, on the way, he wanted to stop in Europe to see the Rebbe, which he hasn't seen for many years since the Rebbe left Russia in 27. So when he came to Paris, he said, I don't have to go any further, there's so much to do here. My mother, and my brother and myself, we were still in Palestine, and it took a year till he brought us over. I don't know how he did it, but whenever he came, he used to make connections very fast. He was very charming. He loved people, and there was a group of Jewish. They were refugees already at that time, because this is when Hitler already started. You know, they left Germany. They were originally in Germany because their situation in Poland was not, economically was not great, so they went to Germany, and then they had to leave Germany. So there was these Polish Jews who did not fit in with the French Jewry at that time, which was had totally different attitude, customs, you know, and so right away my father connected with them, and then they formed an organization. It was an organization of God-fearing Jews. The same thing they asked, what are you, a chassid or a misnaged? You know? And my father said, you answer Ayid. You are a Jew, that's all you answer. You know? I think by affinity, I just stuck in his office. I stuck around there, and kind of learned, you know, for a couple of years. I was just a kid. I mean, I did a lot of learning myself at that time. I first started learning a little more seriously because in Russia, my father didn't send me to school, and here in France, he also didn't find an appropriate school, so I had private tutoring. And I first got really involved when I was really needed, and which, no, it's called, I have a title that I'm part of the resistance, you know. It's when we had to really act to defy the rules. In 1939, we went in Paris. In 1940, we started a process for leaving Paris. So my father created these homes for children. Their parents were afraid of the bombing. A lot of people left Paris because of that. But the people of his community and some other people, Orthodox, Frum people, whatever, wanted a kosher place for their children. So my father started this a home to bring the children south. And my brother and I went to this home. It was near Vichy, and it was called, what's the name? Brou-Vernet was a small place, and it's called Chateau de Morel. They escaped Germany, but to the French, they were the enemy now. You know, they lived because they came.
They were German Jews.
Yeah, they were German Jews. I said they were arrested first, and some of the children already at that time didn't know where their parents were.
And your father took them in?
Yeah. This organization was originally started in Russia, and it's called Œuvre de Secours aux Enfants, Help for Children, an organization to help children. And they were totally secular, and they opened up many homes. And so they started this home in Bruvernet, and my father said, let me have one kosher home. You take care of the physical part, and I'll take care of the educational or the kosher part. So this is how they started working together. You know, it's hard to say how many children were there, because some children found their relatives or parents who took them, who got papers for them and took them to England or to United States or to Switzerland, and other children came. So it was a flux all the time. But there was I would say there were always about 70 children and about 20 or 25 adults to, you know, as a staff that take care of them. At first, we did not have to remain hidden because the French did not know yet exactly how to cooperate with the Germans to get the Jews. But then, right, quite a few months after we were there, we got the news that, first of all, that they didn't want us in that department of Vichy, because it was also a department, the city and a department, and then the seat of French government moved to Vichy, and they didn't want the Jews there, so we had to leave Vichy, and we went to Marseille, and that's where really my job started, where I took children back and forth on the train from Vichy to Marseille. And we had a shochet with us, okay, if we could get the chicken, you know. Most of the time we didn't get chicken, we only had fish, but you know, and that also was rare. But food was always a problem. Food was a problem. There was a doctor on staff, and I became the assistant for the doctor. I learned how to lance boils and to treat impetigo and scabies. Okay, and lice. This followed us. This followed us wherever we went. First of all, my first feeling is somehow that I have to grow up now. You know, I can't be afraid. I have to do this. You know, and then I felt sorry for them, because mostly I had the very little children. They were 4, 5 years old, maybe 1 or 3 years old, and 6, and they were separated from their parents. I was with my parents. I was lucky, and they were without it. They were without their parents. So we placed them first in hotels, and then my father opened up 2 places. One was in Marseille itself, where the offices and the shul were, and then a place a little bit on the outskirts. It was like a villa this time. It wasn't called a chateau, it was a villa.
Can you also talk about the relationship between the police, the French police, and your father? Did your father have to pay them? Was there like an understanding?
My father, most of all, paid him with his charm. He knew how to charm and compliment, and then I don't think there was money exchange, but there were gifts always. And most of the time, the police was friendly to him personally. Whenever he came to a place, he went to meet the head of the police department, and older people say, "Aren't you scared to go there?" No, he says, "That's the way I operate," and he was always lucky. And most of the time, they were the ones who alerted him that it's time to leave, that they can't protect him anymore. And this is what happened in Marseille. A certificate in Evo, where it says permission for my father and 80 some children to go to the west of France, where my father had prepared at that time a place, another chateau. He kind of knew that the situation could worsen, and he had already prepared. Well, he was in Marseille. He already prepared the chateau, and then so we left for the chateau, which Chateau de Saint-Ibon, which was a decrepit chateau. A chateau, we never clarified how French chateaus were. They were the nobility of France had to have some plot of land and in their name, and some chateaus were grand, and some chateaus were smaller than a living room here at our time. This was a nice sized chateau, but no electricity, no running water. And we arrived there at night. The Quakers helped us with blankets. And we stayed there for quite a while, and we started working. It was an agricultural place. He had a big piece of land, and all of us had one thing. My father make sure that everybody pulls their weight. Everyone who has something to teach somebody has to teach somebody. Everyone has to work. And so we all worked on the farms. My job was, at that time, was in the chicken coop and helping with haying. That's working aside and bringing, and then making bundles of hay and then loading a platform that was pulled by 2 oxen, which my father bought. And also he also bought a cow. We had to again disperse. I mean, because again we were told we could not. We planted wheat and everything. We could not reap whatever we planted. We moved back to the east side to Grenoble. It's near the Swiss Alps, and the Italians were at that time occupying this place, and we stayed there in another chateau, which is a grand chateau, no grounds this time. We had to shift, more education, less work, but everybody had to pull their weight. I had a lot of kitchen duty, KP. I learned how to peel potatoes fast. We had contests who can peel the fastest. All right, and we were there. It was for a while, but then the situation deteriorated because the Italian left. It was a political, very complicated stuff between them and the German, and we had to go into severe hiding. And this time we had to separate in small groups and farms high up. And one, unfortunately, tragically, one of our groups was caught. The Germans came and somebody betrayed the place, some of the neighbors or some betrayed, because some people were pro-Nazi. My mother was captured at the same time, but she was captured by the French collaborators, not by the Germans. And they tortured her, a very strange form of torture. They made her bite on glass and eat a broken glass, and eat a bar of soap. The pistol wiped her. But then there was between the French underground and the collaborators, there was some negotiation. At one point they killed a lot of the collaborators, and my mother was let go. Either part of an exchange, I don't know how, to this day.
Did she ever talk about it with you?
Never. She's the one who never talked at all.
Did you ever try bringing it up with her?
I want to tell you, at that time, people didn't talk in general of anybody who died, for instance. They would remove all the pictures right away from the house, and it wasn't spoken ever again. I mean, you didn't speak of anybody, relatives who died. So my mother never spoke about losing her mother when she was a young girl of 12 years old. We had to find it out, kind of few details from other people, but she never spoke about it. It's so hard for me to talk about it because it just crushed him. It was crushed. I can't talk, But he had to there were still the others, he had to carry on. At that time, I was in charge by myself of a small group of children in a farm where I had to take care of all their needs. I had a contact person who used to come and bring some food. Shopping I could not do. I could not leave the place. And yeah, but by this time I was already 16. 15, 16, yeah, 16. They gave me one girl to help me. She'd help with the cooking. I wasn't so good at it, but she had a good background, a kitchen background, and she helped the cooking. But I had to teach the children every day. My father's very strict about, under every circumstances, you have a plan of the day, and you have to schedule, and you have to follow it strictly. And then I had to take care of the hygiene, the washing them, and their clothes. They didn't have too many. And a few times during the time, I had to go from place to place because our cover was blown in one place, and we had to and my father found very quickly another place. And in the middle of the night, I would get out. I have a pack up and get out. So everybody carried their own little package, and stuff, and we walked. I was very scared. There were a lot of dogs there on the way. I didn't know if they were attached or chained, or they were not, and so I was scared. One time, a little girl said to me, I stopped in my tracks because the dogs were barking so loudly, and a little girl said, "Let's think about Hashem and just go." And I was kind of ashamed, and I went, and the kid went, and I followed. stressful, scary, but finally we managed to send practically everybody over to Switzerland. We found smugglers. There's an organization that helped with that. The OSE people, OSE help with smugglers that smuggle the children across the border. Some children, it turned out well, and some others were very unhappy.
Why unhappy?
They did not place them in kosher homes. The little girl that said not to be afraid and think of Hashem, she had a little brother that she took care of. He was frail. She was about 6 and he was 4. And they separated them. They didn't let them be together and send her to a non-kosher home. She didn't want to separate them because she was giving her food away to her little brother, and then they didn't allow that. And she didn't listen. He was so frail, he needed more food. And she used to feed him and give away her food. And they separated him because of that.
Were they reunited?
Years later.
Years later? Not right after the war?
Not immediately, because after the war, she traveled for days by herself as a little kid to find her mother, who was in Belgium or Holland. I don't remember exactly where. Actually, a man helped her along the way. Just a stranger helped her a lot. And then when she arrived, and she rang the bell, and her mother opened the door, and she said, "Little girl, who are you?" And she burst out crying, her mother didn't recognize her.
Oh, wow.
So many years apart.
So when did they locate the brother?
I don't know exactly, but
did you ever speak to her again? Is that how you know this?
Oh, well, yes, she's in Israel, and her brother is in Israel. When France was liberated, I was high up in the Alps on a farm with my parents and with my brother, and we were learning. At that time, my father didn't have anybody to learn with, so he was learning with me. I was his chavruta, what they call, and we just heard because the neighbors had an illegal radio, and they told us, but there was no dancing in the street on the mountain there, you know. And it took us a while till we reunited and managed to get back to Paris. And at that time, there was a lot of work to be done because a lot of children were placed in non-Jewish homes, in churches, monasteries, and so on. And so my father sent a letter to every city hall in France, big cities, towns, hamlets, and so on, to find if there's any Jewish children left. The response was dismal. Very few wanted to give back their children, get attached to them, converted. We actually sent people to, if there's a chance to get the children. If there was a chance to get the children out, we sent people. But basically, we just kept. I know I had a lot of paper cuts from stuffing envelopes. There was no internet and no email in those days. You had to stuff an envelope and lick them, or we adjusted by deadening a part of ourselves. We just tried not to think about it, and not to talk, for sure not to talk about it. So for many years, I never told my children anything because I wanted them to grow up normal and not have that fall over them, that, you know, and then they shouldn't have to compare themselves to me that I did this thing or so on. I didn't consider myself doing something extraordinary. I did what was done for the time, and all my children should have a good time and continue with a life.
Did you find that was the attitude for most Holocaust survivors,
Yeah.
regardless how they experienced the Holocaust back then?
Most of them did not talk till halfway through, their lives, or more later, or more. Most of them. It's like, I think that's what that expression, the elephant in the room, was coined. There was always an elephant in the room, and unspoken things, a secret is unspoken. Physically, I only had problem with my teeth, and I blamed that on not having any milk during the war, lack of nourishment. But otherwise, I don't blame anything on the war. But emotionally, I was kind of blocked. I couldn't smile naturally and quickly. I always felt that I'm not entitled to enjoy life, to somehow, and it was hard to communicate with my children because of that. But I needed a job, and one day I started teaching, and I wasn't a good teacher. And I was trying to find out what is the problem. And I kept watching other teachers trying to learn, and I realized I was a sad sack. Children need a happy person in the classroom. And I decided that every time when I come to school in the morning, I will start singing with the children. And you know what? It helped me more than it helped the children. It did something for me to make them happy. I became much happier. And later on, it helped. This attitude helped me a lot. But I started even speaking, motivational speaking, about people, how to survive difficult situations and so on. Survivor's guilt was the initial few years, is that we could not understand why we survived and our friends, our relatives did not, and then I think after a while I give up with this kind of thinking.
I think at this point people consider you a Jewish rescue activist, but how come it took so long for that to come about? Why would your story was frankly looked over or ignored or not considered as important?
I didn't talk about it till I don't know, about 20 years ago. Berta called me. Berta was one little girl that was with us in Chateau, in the French villa, and Chateau de Saint-Bon, and she was Queen Esther at a play. And she called me and she asked me, "Do you remember me? I was Queen Esther at a play in the house that your father saved us." I said, "Yes, I happen to remember her." And she said to me, "Are you doing something about your father's memory and telling the world about him?" I said, "What?" He said, "Yes, you should know how many people your father saved." And she kind of shamed me and got me into it. She just passed away about half a year ago. The thing that helped me a lot is that I married a happy person, a wonderful, kind, happy person, and who used to tell me, "Move to the middle of the bed, the war is over."
Would you like to say his name?
His name is Carlebach. And I always slept at the edge because there was a bunch of girls sleeping like with 5, 6 in a bed and so on. And they had to go to the bathroom at night. And there were little boys there. And the bathroom was an outhouse. And you can imagine on top of the Alps with snow,
Oh.
and going out to that outhouse at night. And because of malnourishment or someone, they had to get up a few times at night. So they tapped me. I'm at the edge, and they tapped me. I rolled out of bed and took them to the bathroom. They were scared. There could have been animals at night. And we had to walk in snow deep.
Okay.
That's when we had beds. At some points, we didn't have a bed. We had straw.
Is there any message to all those who will be watching this, any message, parting words that you would like to share with them?
Everybody should feel good about themselves, and that in time where they are needed and they have to do something superhuman, even, they can do it. Okay? They should feel that. One thing I didn't say is that I told my father one time that I was scared, and he said, "That's okay, but you have to do it anyway."